In the darkest corners of the human soul, secrets lurk. Secrets we would rather not uncover. Today, we delve into the terrifying case of Igor Irtyshov, a man whose crimes left an indelible mark of horror. Igor Irtyshov was born on August 16, 1971, in a small Russian village called Krasny in the Krasnodar region. His childhood was far from normal. Raised in a dysfunctional family, he suffered a severe head injury in a car accident at the age of 10. Diagnosed with cognitive impairment, he was sent to a special boarding school. There, far from home, Igor experienced relentless bullying, which shaped his psyche in disturbing ways. According to testimonies from his classmates, he often kept to himself, was aggressive, and prone to cruelty. Teachers noted his low ability to learn and complete lack of social skills. He struggled to connect with his peers, and any attempts to make friends ended in outbursts of rage and violence. As the years passed, Irtyshov became more withdrawn. He began to show an interest in violence, first torturing animals, then attacking younger students at the boarding school. The caretakers didn't take this seriously, believing that the boy was trying to cope with trauma in this way. However, these behavioral deviations were merely a forewarning of the horrors he would later commit. Hoping for a better life, Igor moved to St. Petersburg. He took a job as a dishwasher at a cafe but earned most of his money through illegal activities. His disturbing tendencies soon attracted a certain type of clientele, further warping his already twisted mind. Sometime later, Igor climbed the career ladder and became a waiter. However, he had no friends among his colleagues. Everyone kept their distance from the hysterical, vengeful, yet extremely cowardly Irtyshov. He frequently threw tantrums over careless words or sideways glances directed at him. The Pegasus Cafe, where the troublemaker worked, was a popular hangout for gay men in St. Petersburg. Irtyshov often received offers from visitors to continue their acquaintance in a more intimate setting, for money. That's how he began engaging in prostitution. This is how he began engaging in prostitution. It allowed him to live a more luxurious lifestyle, but deep inside he felt hatred and disdain both for his clients and for himself. It was during this period that his inner rage and cruelty reached a critical point. He began using false friendliness to gain people's trust, only to then show violence. Soon, his criminal activity escalated to a new, much more horrifying level. In December 1993, Irtyshov committed his first known crime. He spotted two young boys aged 11 and 12, and using threats, led them into a secluded area. What followed was an act so brutal that even seasoned investigators were horrified. His actions were marked by particular cruelty and cold-bloodedness. After the attack, he left the children in a severely injured state and disappeared into the night, believing they wouldn't be able to describe his appearance. However, one of the boys managed to survive and provide an initial description of the attacker. The police began an investigation, but due to a lack of evidence, it quickly stalled. Irtyshov felt a sense of impunity. This only encouraged him to continue his criminal activities. He began stalking potential victims, carefully selecting those who were most vulnerable. Over the next few months, he carried out several more attacks. His cruelty escalated, and the police realized that a serial offender had emerged in the city, yet Irtyshov remained in the shadows, repeatedly evading capture. With each crime, Irtyshov's brutality increased. In February 1994, he attacked a 9-year-old in an elevator, leaving the child in critical condition. The boy miraculously survived, but suffered severe injuries that changed his life forever. By May of that year, another victim, a 10-year-old boy, was left permanently disabled. Irtyshov became bolder, feeling his impunity. He started looking for victims in different areas of the city, trying to confuse the investigation. In June, he targeted 2 schoolboys, spreading terror throughout the city. The attacks became increasingly brutal, and the criminal's signature more recognizable. investigators began noticing patterns. The perpetrator targeted children of a certain age, acted in deserted areas, and his aggression went beyond typical assaults. By this point, fear had gripped the parents of the city. Children stopped going out alone, and the police began nighttime patrols in an attempt to catch the unknown maniac. However, Irtyshov continued to act, confident in his elusiveness. On September 29, 1994, Irtyshov committed his final and most horrifying crime. He attacked 9-year-old Kostya Kuzmin in his apartment building's stairwell. Miraculously, the boy survived and provided police with a description of his attacker, leading to Irtyshov's downfall. Irtyshov, hiding his face in the shadow of the entrance, waited for the boy who was returning home from school. When Kostya entered the building, the attacker jumped on him, throwing him to the floor. However, despite the fear and pain, the boy managed to scream and break free, running through the hallway in search of safety. A few minutes later, hearing the footsteps of other residents, Irtyshov abandoned the child and fled, but his actions did not go unnoticed. Despite his injuries, Kostya was able to provide a description of his attacker. His words became the key to the case, leading the investigation to the terrifying truth. It was later revealed that Irtyshov was acquainted with Kostya's parents, and his cruel crimes had been ongoing for years. But until that moment, he had managed to cover his tracks. The police quickly arrested Irtyshov, and during the investigation, other victims were identified. This tragedy became the breaking point in a series of crimes that had shaken the city, and it was the testimony of the little boy that became the pivotal moment when the criminal was caught and stripped of his freedom. As the crimes continued, investigators realized they were dealing with a serial predator. The patterns were undeniable. All victims were young boys between 9 to 15 years old. The attacks took place in stairwells, deserted streets, and dimly lit courtyards. The brutality escalated with each crime. A breakthrough came when one of the surviving victims, 9-year-old Kostya Kuzmin, provided a detailed description of the attacker. This allowed police to circulate a sketch of the suspect. Irtyshov sensed the danger. He attempted to go into hiding. He moved to another district hoping to blend into the crowd. Changed his clothing and behavior to avoid suspicion. Considered fleeing to another region but hesitated. However, police were closing in. In November 1994, an investigator spotted a man matching the suspect's description. Irtyshov was arrested in an apartment where authorities discovered evidence linking him to the crimes. During interrogations, he feigned insanity, but psychological evaluations proved he was fully aware of his actions. With overwhelming evidence, he confessed to his crimes. On trial, Irtyshov remained emotionless, showing no signs of remorse. Witnesses described his eerie, cold gaze as he listened to the charges against him. Originally sentenced to death, his punishment was later commuted to life imprisonment due to Russia's moratorium on the death penalty. In court, Irtyshov remained calm, even as his crimes were detailed. His face showed no fear or remorse. He sat with an entirely emotionless expression, as if what was happening didn't concern him. Witnesses, including former victims and even those who knew Irtyshov personally, noticed his darkness and inhumanity. Some of them couldn't hold back tears while recounting what they had endured. The defense attorney tried to mitigate the sentence, insisting on the absence of premeditation and the defendant's mental state, but these arguments had no effect on the judges. When the charges were read out, Irtyshov remained motionless, and his gaze seemed vacant and detached, as if he didn't perceive reality. Initially, a death sentence was handed down, which caused a wide public outcry. However, due to the moratorium on the death penalty in Russia, the sentence was commuted to life imprisonment. Irtyshov showed no joy or disappointment, merely coldly listening to the court's decision. He was sent to a high-security correctional facility, where his days were devoid of any hope for freedom. In prison, Irtyshov's mental state deteriorated. He wrote incoherent letters and displayed disturbing behavior. In February 2021, he died from heart failure while serving his sentence in a high-security prison. In prison, Irtyshov was isolated from society, which further intensified his mental state. He was unable to adequately perceive what was happening, often losing touch with reality and spending his days in the shadow of his past. His letters, which he wrote without any logic or sense, were filled with paranoid phrases and absurd accusations against other inmates and guards. With each passing year, his behavior became more eccentric. He could sit silently in the corner of his cell for hours, staring at a single point, or shout incomprehensible things, refusing to interact with other inmates. Guards and medical personnel repeatedly tried to assist him, but their efforts resulted in only short-term relief of his condition. In February 2021, due to a general decline in his health, Irtyshov suffered a severe episode caused by heart failure. He died in his high-security cell, and despite the lengthy attempts of medics to revive him, they were unable to bring him back to life. Thus ended the long and grim path of one of the most terrifying criminals of his time. The story of Igor Irtyshov serves as a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurks within some individuals. His life was a path filled with pain and horror, leaving an unforgettable mark on Russia's criminal history. The story of Igor Irtyshov became a symbol of how hidden dark sides of a personality can remain invisible for a long time, only to unleash their destructive power on others. He was born amidst the grayness of everyday life, and even those who knew him earlier could never have suspected that behind his mask of ordinariness lay monstrous cruelty. His crimes, brutal and inhumane, shocked society and left scars on the souls of his victims and their families. The time spent in prison did not bring him any repentance. Instead, it only accelerated his descent into a mental abyss. Yet, even in death, Irtyshov remained a mystery. Despite the severity of his crimes, his image became part of a dark chapter in Russia's criminal history. He became a reminder of how far human darkness can go if it is not confronted in time. The city in which he lived continued its rhythm. Rainy nights, reflections in puddles, forgotten shadows. But the memory of what he had done did not fade. Against the backdrop of peaceful streets and calm houses, a quiet but relentless anxiety lingered. Perhaps Igor Irtyshov was not the only one, and similar stories are hidden in the very fabric of society, waiting for their moment. Subscribe to stay up to date with new videos, like and comment. See you in 4 days.